Would you like the end of your lines to last longer and look nicer? It's easier than you think, and I'll show you how to. Do you keep the lines like this, that you got them from the shop, just cut by a heated knife? This probably won't last very long. Or do you do this? Do you put tapes on the end and hope that will last? Again, this is not anything that will last for very long. It's a very temporary solution to your end of your lines. Maybe you do this. You do some melted end and then you put some shrink wrap tubing on top. This is a way better solution. The resistance of the tubing on sunlight might vary, but it's a nice soft ending to the rope. A more traditional ending would be a whipping like this. In this case it's a whipping and it's quite a soft end. You can also, of course, combine this with melting as well. But this is a nice ending to rope that will last for a long time. Or, well, same thing, melting and whipping, different thread. Or maybe you prefer the older style using tarred string to do the whipping. This is a bit thicker as well, and a very nice soft ending to the rope. Or you can do sewn whipping like this. Looks quite nice. A bit more work to do. The other whippings are very, very easy to do. This is a bit more complex, but not very. It takes a bit longer though. Or maybe you use the walker's knot to terminate your ends. One knot, very strong. You need no tools whatsoever to do this. It's just a knot you need to learn. It's not that difficult. And you have a very strong ending to your lines. And you can of course combine that with melting as well. Or maybe you like doing an end splice like this. This is a tapered one. You can see it narrows off. Could be a nice ending to your lines. Depends what you prefer. I do it sometimes, but not on all my ropes. Or why not ending it with a walnut? Seriously, this is more for fun. This is not a very practical ending of a line, but just shows that you have lots of options how you will end your line. Okay, so how do we cut a rope? Well, I put the knife here. As I said, for thin ropes like this, sharp scissors works well as well. But it doesn't matter, whatever you do, when you cut a rope, the rope will unwrap itself. So you'll need to prevent that. You could do that with string, of course. I can tie off with string on both ends and cut in the middle. But let's be modern, be convenient, use some tape. This is just temporary. You put some tape. You don't need to do a lot of work on this, and then you'll cut either against some wood, or if you have a sharp enough knife you can just cut it like this. And that's cut rope, and typically after you cut rope you will melt the end, because no matter what you do it makes it much easier to melt the end so it doesn't unravel when you take off the tape. So we'll melt the end and melt it a bit more than you think. When you go from the shop and they use the heated knife, that doesn't do a very deep melt. So that melt is not very strong. It will easily break. If you melt it a bit more like I did now, it's much tougher melt and will hold it together much more. But you're listening to me on the video and I would say don't leave the tape. It looks ugly, right? It's a very good tool to cut the rope, but don't leave the tape here. It will fall off anyway, right? So we take the tape off. After we cut the rope, we take the tape off. And I wouldn't recommend leaving the rope like this, because this is not a very strong. Even though I melted it deeper, you can melt it a bit more as well. But this is likely to, within a couple of years, something will break here, because it's quite brittle as well. I can probably pull this apart with my hands now. And if I can do that after a couple of years in the boat, being used a lot, stepped on, whatever, it will break apart. So let's go through more in detail how you will end your lines. Okay, let us start with something really simple. It does require some special equipment because I'm going to use heat shrink tubing. If you don't have that, you can't use this method. If you have it, it's one way of ending the rope. This is not one of my favorites, mainly because I don't usually carry the right size of tube in the boat, and I do most of my rope work in the boat. But if you plan a bit ahead and carry it on the boat, this is an easy way of doing it, and it's a strong and quite nice ending of your rope. First thing is of course to melt the end of it. I'm using an ordinary lighter here. You can use a candle or anything. You don't need to have any special tooling for this. Melt a bit more though than you think is needed, because you want it deep, and also make it round and nice, because actually my tubing here is quite narrow, so it's a very tight fit, so I can't have it stick out, then it won't fit. Let it cool down for a few seconds, then remove the tape. Don't need that much, just to cover the end. And one thing I'll do when I do this, because let's start it. Typical with a melted end is that you have quite sharp edges here. You will notice that sometimes when you do splices, it actually can stick in the fiber. So when we do this with the heat shrink tubing like this, we should take the opportunity and let it cover those sharp ends. So when we put this on, we'll make sure we leave a couple of millimeters of tubing on the outside, so it will melt across those edges. So something like that. You see it's hanging over there. So I will just shrink this now and you will see the result. Okay, like that. As I said, this tubing has melt glue on the inside as well, so it really sticks, which is good. And I haven't been able to find other colors with melted glue on the inside here in Sweden now, but here's your end. And this is a strong end. We have the melting inside, so even if this tube will fail and you're observant on your ropes, you can replace this piece before the rope starts to unravel. So it's a really good solution, and it's a strong, quite nice looking, especially if you find the color the same as your rope. Anyone can do this as long as you get hold of the heat shrink tubing, and then it's an easy one to make. A more traditional way of ending a line is a whipping like this, and I will show you how to make this. It's very easy as well. To make this I will use a thicker rope, and I will actually use red string for this because it's more visible for you, and of course it could be looking nice. This is a bit too thick, I would say, normally for whipping, unless you have really thick rope. This is I think 3 millimeters, yeah. More like a 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeter would make more sense, but for visibility reasons we will use this thick red one, make it easier for you to follow. So how do you go about it? Well, you make a loop. So you always, I should say that, you always start from the rope going towards the end when you do whipping. And you start by doing a loop with this. So you have the loop going towards the end. And then you start to take the line around. I start with, well, I need more actually. That's a bit short. Do a couple of loose ones first so you get started, and then you need to tighten this, because the whole thing with the whipping is, of course, it should be really, really tight. So tighten this up. So you see I have the loop there, and I tighten it up like that. And then I continue. And now it's important that you make it tight and also next to each other, because you want this to be really tight and closed. So you shouldn't see the white rope between anywhere. You make it tight. And of course, If you want to make a long one, you need lots of string. I didn't take that much string, so I'm running out here. Tighten it up. And to close this now, you take the end of the string and put it through the loop. And you close the loop here. And you tighten, and you tighten, and you tighten. Like that. So now we're almost done. This is whipping. The problem now, we're almost done, but you see, well, maybe you don't, but here, it's the loop that goes across underneath here, and it locks the end here. And it's very close. So if I cut here now, there will be very few millimeters. And if it moves around, it could actually slip through, and that will then it will fall apart. So what I need to do now is to pull in this end. So I pull this loop into the middle. The aim is into the middle, because then you will have a half loop coming from here and another one coming from here, and they meet in the middle. And they will both be locked down by the rest of the whipping. So that will be a very, very strong whipping. This is a very wide line, thick line compared to, so we'll see if I manage to pull it in. Well, it's partly inside. Let's see a bit more. Yep, that did it. It's in the middle. Didn't make it tight enough, so it actually opened up a bit, which is not ideal, but this will do it. So I now know that they meet in the middle here. So both lines, double lines, locked by three or four turns on each side. This is a very strong whipping. So if I now cut this off, both ends, like that, we're done. Wow, you probably want to cut the rope as well. So let's cut the rope. And depending on your preference, you can cut it a bit out here, maybe 10, in this case 10 millimeters or so. Or you can cut it quite close. Don't cut it too close though. You need some rope left, because otherwise it will fall in. The whipping will fall in. You need to have the resistance. So I will make it like this. Something like that. And you can leave it like that. Could look like quite nice. Or you can of course melt it. If you want to melt it, you probably want to make it a bit shorter than this. I usually also melt, you see these sticks out. They don't look very nice like that, so I'll just melt them. Oh, that's too much actually. Melt them in. Oh, I damaged the whipping a bit. That was not my plan. So either you can leave it like this, or you can make it even shorter. Let's do it like this instead. Tighten this up a bit. Something like that. And now you can melt this one. Not fantastic. Something like that. You can of course work on how good it looks. Thinner line for the whipping makes it look better. How long you make this, if you melt it or not, you can play around with that. But this, what we have here, is a very strong whipping. It will last for a long time, and it's your protection as well. If you melt this a bit more than I did here, the melting will hold it together and the whipping will hold it together. If you have a failure on the end, it will be a failure on one side. If it's the melting, the whipping will hold the rope together. If it's the whipping that fails, the melting will hold it together for a while, not very long, but for a while, and you have time to replace the whipping if you are observant of your ropes. So this is a whipping. Maybe I should redo this in white as well, so you'll see how it probably should look in most cases with a thinner line. So I'll do that as well. So we'll take white line. This is a 1.4 millimeter line. So it's the same procedure. Let's do it. This will be harder for you to see. I'll take this away. I think this background makes it more visible. You start with a loop. And it's a bit filly as well within the line. And you make a couple of loose turns first to get started, and then you tighten those loops up before you can get moving. So we tighten them up like that. Come on, tighten that and that and that. Starting to get there. And when I do this, I will explain one more thing. As I said, you go always from the rope towards the end when you do whipping. You always go against the rope as well. So if the rope goes this direction, I do the whipping in the other direction. It's probably not a disaster if you do it the opposite way around, but that's what it's recommended, and it doesn't disform the rope as much as going the other direction. And again, doing it really tight, pulling hard several times. If you go really thick, ropes are actually special tools that you can use to help doing this really tense. Good tension on the line is important, but you can do quite big ropes by hand like this. Okay, I'm running out of thread here, so I will end it there. Same thing. Close the loop, tighten there, tighten there, tighten there. Now it's harder to see, but again we have the loop here and I can't cut. I need to pull this loop into the middle. So we'll see how that will go. This line is not so comfortable to pull in. A bit more. There we go. So almost pulled it too far, actually. A bit hard to see. I think it's probably over here, but it's pulled in and it's still, I can't see the end from here, so it should be okay. So that's a thinner whipping. So let's cut these off. Be a bit more careful, but I don't like that. That's better. And we can now cut this. And I'll cut it there. Something like that. So there, take this away again. Well, we have a whipping, a quite short one, but that should be fine. The length of the whipping is really mainly to be able to keep the locking in the middle. So if I made it a bit longer, it would have been easier to find the middle for the meeting of the two loops. But that's fine, and that will last for a long time. And again, if you do the melting as well, it will be even stronger. So let's try and make this a nice melted end. Then you need to make it shorter probably to make it look real nice. Scissors might not be the normal tool for boat work, but I think why not use modern tools if you have a sharp scissors. Makes it a bit easier than cutting it nice with a knife. I'll do it like that and then melt it without burning it too much. I want it to look nice now. Something like that. That's not a bad end. It's quite good, nice end to your line. A good melt and a good whipping. This will last longer than the rest of the line. So this will protect your rope and make it look professional, and you will avoid having ropes that looks terrible on your deck and that actually gets destroyed. So as you saw, very simple to do. Try it out a couple of times. It's a bit fiddly the first couple of times to get the loop started, but easy enough to do when you get the hang of it. So just to repeat myself, you start with a loop. The whole idea is you're going to use this end of the loop to close, put this end in and close the whole whipping. That's why I do it. So you need to have enough line on this side to complete the whipping. So this is a bit too short. You do a couple of loose turns first so you can tighten it up. All right, you need it tight from the beginning. So this is tight and straight, of course. And to repeat myself, you go from the rope towards the end and you go against the rope. So if the rope goes this way, I do the whipping this way. A bit tighter than what I did now. This is just to show you once more. You put it through, you lock, you tighten both ends, and then the whole thing is you need to pull this into the middle. It was hard with the left hand actually. Let's try it if I can do it here. There we go. So now it's in the middle and it's locked, and I can cut the ends. And we have another whipping. So very easy to make, very strong. The only disadvantage with this kind of whipping is that it could separate a bit. So you will see the line through. If everything is white, it doesn't really matter, unless it starts moving away a long way, of course, because then it loosening itself up. There is another whipping, I will show that as well separately, which is a zone whipping where you actually put the line across as well to keep the whipping together. But to my experience, for amateur use, this lasts very long. If you use your ropes on a daily basis, maybe you should consider the zone one, but for normal use, I think this will last very long. Okay, so we've done an ordinary whipping like this, very easy, no tools needed. Let's try and make a zone whipping as well. A zone whipping is even stronger. The main advantage is that you have stitches across here that will keep the whipping together, because the major risk of a whipping like this is that it separates and that will lose the pressure on the locking and it will fall apart. It's not very likely to happen, but if you really want to be sure, you will use zone whipping. The only problem with the zone whipping is that you need a tool, so you'll need some kind of needle, otherwise it's really hard to make them. Even though there are variants where you actually go between the parts, but I will use a needle for this one. There are different ways of starting them, but I will actually start my zone whipping exactly the same way, because I like that way, and you will get a starting point that's self-locked. It's much easier to do it that way. So let's try. I have actually some ready-made. It's dark, so it's easy for you to see if I take this. This is a waxed line as well. As I said, it's not necessary. It is a bit easier, and sometimes it's nice, but this is a bit thinner as well compared to, this is 1.2 and the other one is 1.4 millimeters. So this is a bit easier to get in the needle, hopefully. Yay. Okay, but as I said, I will start exactly the same way. So I will make a loop, and this is not most people don't start a zone whipping this way, but I think it's very nice to do the same thing. We start by doing the loop. We start by pulling it tight because all whipping needs to be tight. As before, we start from the rope going towards the end and keep it tight. The thing with some whipping is also that it doesn't have to be as long, because we are now going to keep it together, and the locking will not be in the middle of the whipping itself. It will be in the sewing afterwards. So we can actually leave it very short. Let's do one more, and then we'll lock the end as we did before, just so we have a starting point. Like that. But we don't bother to pull it through. Actually, we don't want to pull it through because one of the strengths is this end is now locked under the whole whipping. We're going to tie them off later on as well, but this is a good start. Okay, what we want to do now is we want to use the needle and stitch it through. And there are different ways of doing this. I actually like this to be a bit, so I will actually go diagonally from here through and come out on this side. And I want to come out between the strands if possible, so it looks nice. And I managed to make this very tight. This is the first one, and this is the only one that's really a bit tough to get through. Now this will be easier because they will be in the strand, and let's see if I manage this, otherwise I'll change my plans. Oh, don't want to get up in the whipping. Misjudged the angle there. That's close enough. Pull it through. It's a bit harder work, this one. And we need to get the whole line through. Let's see which part is possible to move live on. Good. So now we're going to make these stitches which will keep the whipping together. So I'll go back here, and now it's more to follow the strands. So I go here and come out between there, tighten, then I go over here, come out over there, tighten. Oh, that wasn't perfect, but it's fine. Actually went a bit into that strand, but that doesn't matter. Go in here, come up there. We've done one revolution, and we'll go do one more. Same way. Go through here. Like that. Tighten. First one wasn't perfect. Let's make this one better. Better, still not perfect, but better. And tighten that one. And now we need to start having a plan where we're going to tie this off. So I want to tie it off on the rope and not the end, right? I want to tie it off here. Well, it's not much of a rope, but this is the end of the rope. So we want to tie it off on that side so we can cut it close here. So I have one of these to make, so I'm going to go across here, and I want to tie the knot so the knot is hidden. So I will not go from here to there, I will go from here to there, and then we can tie the knot behind. So it will be the same. You can do a bit of planning earlier, or you just sort it out at your last stitch like I do now. So I go across from there to here, and actually it's good if it goes a bit through here. needs to get close. That would be fine. And tighten. So far so good. Now we're going to take this end and that end, and we're going to tie them together in the middle of the rope, preferably. So I will take it through here, and I will use it, not the square knot, I will use a surgical knot because that's safer, even though this is actually wax line as well, so a square knot would probably be okay, but just to be on the safe side, I need to put this end through. And I've said you need one tool, so I'm not going to get another tool out. This should be doable. Here we go. Well, let's see how much I messed it up. See if it still works. And tie it behind there. And then we're going to do the second part of the knot. So the surgical, it's the same as the square knot, it's just that the first half knot you do twice, you do a double, and then the second one you do single, and that will make the square knot to fall apart in a way that it locks better. And it's used by surgeons sewing so the stitches don't get loosened like that. So this looks quite nice, and we can cut these off. This ready-made strand is actually some kind of Dyneema or something, so it's a bit, that scissors not perfect. That's how it looked like, and we can now go ahead and cut off the end. Let's say we'll leave a couple of millimeters like that. And either you leave it like this, or the preferred way for me is to at least melt it a bit on the outside, because otherwise it gets so fluffy, something like that. So there we are. Soon whipping, you'll see the stitches will keep it together, and because of that you can make it much smaller, more discreet. In this case I used a dark color, so it's not that discreet. If you do it white color, it's very discreet. If you want to show that you have professional ended ropes, you might choose this one. But again, I used this special line board for this. It's waxed, which makes it a bit easier to do. But you can, as I mentioned in another video, you can also of course put any kind of wax on this one, and that will be fine. The main reason I used this was the darker color. It's easier for you to see, and also that it's slightly thinner. This is 1.2 millimeters, this is 1.4. Not a big difference, but it made it easier to get it into the needle. But both options works fine. This is easier to cut as well, because this is normal polyester or whatever it is, and this is, well, it feels like Dyneema or something much more difficult to get through, and you don't really need that kind of strength in this end. This will be okay, but it's convenient. If you pick one up, it's 30 meters on a roll like this. That will last you for a long time. You need maybe a meter maximum each time you do a whipping, so 20-30 times you can use this roll. So compared to the value of your ropes, it's probably a good investment. But I have 200 meters on this one, I think. Yeah, 200 meters. That will last me a long time. well, not that long time, because you end up using it for a lot of other things as well, of course, but it will do my whipping for a long time. Okay, I hope you are successful with this. Again, as with everything else, it's good to take an old rope to do it a couple of times to figure out how you want to do them. I did the double. You can do single, but you need to plan ahead. So because you need to end it on the inside, because if I had the knot here, that would be vulnerable, right? So you need to plan ahead, but you can always stitch it through somehow and make sure that you end on the inside with both ends, and then you're fine. Okay, let's see what you can do without any tools whatsoever. You buy a rope at the shop, they will cut it for you, melted cut. This is not done by a knife like that, but it's a similar one. It's quite thin, as you can see. Maybe this is a bit wider actually than you will get from the shop, but it will prove the point. So what will happen, you start using this, and very likely after a while of usage, one of these will break off. Let's see, like that. And you will have a rope looking like this. And first thing is, of course, it doesn't look very nice, but it will actually destroy a rope, because it will continue to unwrap itself until it's completely destroyed. So the immediate action for this, if you see this on a rope, is of course to tie a knot to prevent it from untangling anymore. You can do that, but you can actually do a lot more without spending much more time. There is a knot called the walker's knot that will terminate this line in a permanent way, and you don't need any tools at all. What you need to do is to unwrap the whole thing a bit, of course, because you need something to tie the knot with. The longer ends you have, the easier it is to tie the knot. So let's say that's fine then. And then you need to tie the knot. And it's quite easy. You do a loop and around the rope and out through here. Now you take the next strand. And now you just need to think of what you're doing. This go behind, under, and through the same loop, around the same way, around everything, and out through its own loop only. So you see, the first one there, the second one there, and guess what? The third one does the same. It goes behind and through both loops, underneath the ends, around and through itself only, like this. So you have 1, 2, oops, and 3. Now we need to tighten it carefully. We want to tighten it as far in that direction as possible. Don't tighten it too hard to start with, but tighten it evenly. You see, we're starting to get there. This is the knot. And we can now make sure that it all looks nice here while we continue to tighten it. Start to find that goes down there. All right. Looks okay. It goes down there. Goes down there. Tighten it a bit more. Okay. Tighten it. Tighten it a bit more. Getting there. It's done and it's strong. I'm just tidying it up so it looks a bit nicer. I want them to fall down like that. Well, good enough. So there we have it. Depending on the type of rope, it can look nice. So this rope, as you can see, unwraps itself very, very much, right? So it's a bit hard to make the knot look super nice, but on some rope it will actually look very nice. And if it's a wider rope, you can also work longer with it, easier to see what you're doing, and you can make it look quite nice. But this one now protects the end of your rope, and you don't really need to do much more with it. The only thing you need to do the next time you have a knife or scissors, you just need to cut it off. And now you have an ending of the rope that will protect the rope forever. This usually don't loosen up. It's a rather strong knot. But again, whenever you have a lighter or anything close by, you can also as well melt the end. And now you have a rope that is both melted and, well, this is kind of whipping, but I use a rope for doing the whipping as well, so it's a self-whipped end of the rope. This is a very strong end. Of course, the disadvantage with this is this knot. This makes the rope a bit wider at the end, so sometimes this will not work, right? But it's something you can do on a rope that will sort out the rope, save the rope without having any tools at hand. You can just make the knot and the rope is saved. It can be used, and you need to cut the ends later on, and you can melt it, or you can of course do whatever you usually do, put a proper whipping here and cut it again. But now you have something, a useful rope again. And here's one, the other end here. Actually I've done the same knot, and in this case I didn't bother to melt, I just left it like this, which also looks nice in a way. Depends on your preferences, how you like the rope. But the walker's knot, really useful, and I will actually show you this in a better way than the knot again. So I'll bring some thinner strands in different colors and show you to tie this knot, because I think it's really great to know how to do this. Okay, so here we are. I made a short piece of rope using 3 strands of different color, which makes it much easier. So we'll make one of these walker's knot, these ones, using this rope instead, so it's easier to see how I actually do it. So again, starting the topmost, making a loop around the whole thing and out through its own loop. The next one through the previous loop, around and out through itself, like that. And the third one through the previous loops, underneath, around and out through itself. You see? 1, 2, 3. Works on 4 strands as well. Just do it one more time and we'll tighten this up. And since this is much tighter, you will see the potential of the knot. It can actually look really nice. So let's see. Let's start tightening it up carefully and make sure that this goes nicely together while we tighten them. Here we go. So here we are. Can work a bit more on it. You can see you have red, white, black, red, white, black. So you haven't crossed anything of this, which is the way it should be done. You can see the white through there. Not a big problem if everything is white, but in this one it shows that it could be perfected a bit more. There we are. So this will now hold the rope together, and it's really hard to untie this because this end goes through the whole thing. So it's locked down by the two other strands. So and if you make this really tight, it's not very likely to untighten itself. It's a very good knot. So that's the walker's knot on 3 colored strands on white strand. Another way to end your lines is with a splice, an end splice. This one is not very nice, but I'll show you how to make one, and I will make one that probably looks a bit nicer than this as well. But an end splice, it has the advantage of, if you taper it like this, it's a bit thicker at the end, of course, but there's not any bumps or anything that will hold up the line. If it's something that is important for you, that it can easily go in and out of things, an end splice could be the solution. And this is also very strong end. It will not fall apart easily, so it will protect your ropes. So to start this, I will use my homemade rope with 3 colors. It makes it a bit easier for you to see, I think. So I'll leave that in view so you can see what the end goal is. So what I need to do, this one will unravel very easily, so I will struggle a bit with it. But if you go to the end, you'll need to start by taking one of the parts over the next one, and this one over this one, and then this one over, and it will be locked like this. And this is how you can start a splice. So you need to tighten this up, and this is the first step that will lock the line. So when I've done this, my line should then be okay. So that's it. This is like a flat end now to this rope. And now I'm in a situation where I can start splicing. So the black one is here, it goes over the red and under the black. The white one is here, it goes over the black and under the white. And the red one here goes over the red. Yeah, over the white and under the red. Like that. That's what I did last time as well, but I did only 2 and then I thought it looked wrong, but now I can tighten it a bit and it actually looks better. It looks fine. Like that. We can now continue. So normal way, over one, under the next. Over one, under the next. Over one, under the next. Tighten it. Yeah, see we're getting there. This top doesn't look that nice, but it's because this one got turned around a bit. I would have looked better with a proper rope, actually, I think. You'll see when I make it on the rope, it will look better. Let's do one more. The length of this is a bit depending on how slippery your rope is. If it's really slippery rope, you need to do more. If it's a more friction rope, you can do less. So maybe 3 would be enough for some ropes, even 2, at least as a base. But I will taper this and I will show you this as well, because usually when you do this you want a smooth ending and then you want this tapered, because if we just end it here you will have like a lump. So what we'll do now is that we will skip one of them and we'll continue with two of them. So we'll take the white and we'll take the white one more. Actually, I started with the white, so we'll skip the black one instead because it's more natural to go this direction. And I'll do the red. So now we've done two of them, one more, and I will take the red yet one. So I'll end up there. Like that. We tighten it a bit. And this is where we get to. I'm not going to cut these because I'm going to reuse them, but as you can see, we now have a tapered end, so it slowly gets wider, and then here you have the maximum width, and then it's ended there. So this is the principle of an end splice. So let's try and make that on a rope and see how that looks. So I'll use a bit thicker rope like this. It's a bit sad to cut this because there's nothing wrong with it, but let's do that. At least I will save a piece. I can do something with that. This dimension, easiest to cut with a knife. Like that. And before I do anything else, I will melt it at the end. I will make it so much easier, and I will melt it quite a lot so it doesn't fall apart, because when you do splicing, that's something that you don't like. That will be fine. It's stuck. Good. And that's cooling down a bit. Melted plastic sticks to your skin. It's really warm. Not so nice to get on your fingers, but of course that's a hazard playing around with this. If you're too eager, you will get burnt sometimes. So there we are. So let's start to unwrap this, or decide really now. I think we'll do this the smart way. We'll put a block. So let's say we need some endings here. So let's say we'll do it from here. So I'll just make sure it doesn't unravel too much. So we'll just put a line on there for now. That's good enough. So now let's see. This is cold enough, maybe too cold, so maybe I can't pull it apart. Let's see. Yeah, I could. Okay, so open it up until we get to my stopper there. And here we go then. So we need to start by taking this part over this part. This part will then lock this part and go over the next part. And this part will lock this one and go over this part. So in that loop there. And this will then close down to a good starting point. Tighten it up a bit. I'm twisting it a bit as well because it unwraps it well, and I always preferred when you can see the rope rather than just the loose strands when you see. But it's really hard with some modern ropes. It gets flat typically. So see, like that. Oh, can't get it much better right now. We can take this away. Don't need that. We are in this position. and it's very slippery rope, as you can see. It loosens itself as soon as so we need to start doing the splicing so we can start tensioning this up. So normal splice above, under the next, and we'll do the first turn here before we tension this. So here we are, and now we can start getting some. Now it's also important that you balance this. You want it to be equal shape, good tension all around. That's good enough. We'll do more tensioning after the next. So we do another one. 1, 2, and 3, and like that. Not too bad. Okay. Tension each strand like this, and then you pull in the rope as well. When it looks balanced and okay, it's probably okay. So I didn't make very long strands here, so I will actually say this is enough, and I will taper from here. So that means I will leave one of the strands and I will take 2 strands further on. So over one, under one ended there. I've taken 2, one more turn, and I'm now going to take one more turn with the last one. So we'll move what will look best. No, I'll take this one. One more. We are. The right tension. Does it look okay? Tensioning that, tensioning that, tensioning that, and tensioning the whole thing. Looks fine. Now we cut this off, and typically we leave a bit, or my preference is to actually melt the end quite close. It looks nicer. So I think this is quite good to do with a knife, because then you can control the length by the slackness you have here. So if I cut it like that, for instance, that's way too short if you don't melt. If you don't melt, you need to leave, in this case, maybe 20 millimeters. But I'm going to melt these, so that will work as a stopper as well. So that's fine. And I'm looking, there it is. So now we melt this. There we are. And they looks quite okay. And what you can see, we have a tapered end splice. At these dimensions, it's quite steep. So if you wanted to, you could actually take these 2 steps further along. So you can have taken 2 steps on this one more, and this one could have gone 2 more, and you would have gotten an even nicer taper. It depends on how much rope you want to lose as well, because you'll need some working ends as well. So of course you are, I mean, in this case, this is rubbish, so you waste a bit of the rope on doing this. But it's a very strong, very nice ending, traditional ending to your rope. And you can of course combine this. If you now want to put a whipping on top of this to hide, if you leave this, if you don't do the melting and you leave them, You might want to cover them with a whipping. That's also possible to do. But maybe that's a bit overwork, to do a bit too much. You don't really need that. So this is a nice spliced end to your rope.